Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the Terra Nova, sipping his morning coffee and watching the stars drift past the main viewport. It was supposed to be a routine patrol mission along the outer rim of human space. Nothing exciting ever happened out here. The crew had been complaining about the boring assignment for weeks. Lieutenant Lisa Carter looked up from her communications console with a confused expression. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming from outside our galaxy." Jake nearly choked on his coffee. "Outside our galaxy, are you sure?" "Yes, sir. The signal is definitely coming from beyond the Milky Way, and Captain, it's addressed to something called the primitive carbon-based life forms of the third planet from the yellow star." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Jake set down his coffee cup and straightened in his chair. "Put it on the main screen." The view screen flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a large alien creature wearing an elaborate golden helmet with spikes jutting out in all directions. The creature had purple skin, yellow eyes, and what looked like plastic jewels glued to its forehead. Behind it, Jake could see other aliens in similar costumes moving around what appeared to be a bridge made of shiny metal and blinking lights. "Greetings, pathetic creatures of the insignificant world you call Earth," the alien announced in a booming voice. "I am Ambassador Vextar Bloodclaw of the Supreme Galactic Empire of Zephyria. You will surrender immediately to our mighty forces, or face total annihilation." Jake blinked several times. The alien's voice sounded like it was being run through some kind of voice modifier to make it sound deeper and more threatening. Behind him, he could hear one of the junior officers trying to suppress a snicker. "Your feeble species has been selected for conquest by our glorious Emperor," Vextar continued, raising what appeared to be a plastic scepter topped with a flashing red light. "You will provide us with 10,000 of your finest warriors as tribute. You will also surrender all your shiny metals and precious stones to fuel our war machine." Dr. Kevin Park, the ship's science officer, leaned over to Jake and whispered, "Captain, their translator is working perfectly, but some of these terms seem odd." "Shiny metals sounds like something a child would say." Jake nodded slightly, keeping his expression neutral. On screen, Vextar was now pacing back and forth, his cape fluttering dramatically behind him. The cape appeared to be made of bright red fabric with gold trim, and it kept getting caught on things as he moved. "Our fleet of doom vessels is already approaching your star system," Vextar declared. "Each ship carries enough firepower to crack your planet like an egg. Our planet-crushing weapons have destroyed countless worlds across the galaxy." "Behold, the mighty dreadnought Decimator," Vextar said, gesturing to what appeared to be a small window showing space. A ship came into view that looked like it was made of welded metal plates painted silver, with what appeared to be Christmas lights running along its hull. Jake had to bite the inside of his cheek to keep from smiling. The alien ship looked like something built in a high school shop class. "It's very impressive," he managed to say. "You have exactly one Earth rotation to consider our generous offer," Vextar continued. "Surrender now, and we will allow some of your species to live as our servants. Refuse, and we will unleash the full power of our galactic armada upon your world." The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. After a moment, Lieutenant Carter spoke up. "Captain, should I contact Earth Command?" "Yes, send them a full recording of that transmission," Jake replied. "And Lisa, run a full analysis on their technology. I want to know what we're really dealing with here." Over the next few hours, the crew worked frantically to gather information about their unexpected visitors. Dr. Park ran the alien transmission through every analysis program they had, while the engineering team tried to get sensor readings on the approaching fleet. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh was the first to report back. "Captain, I've got some readings on their ships. They're definitely real, but the energy signatures are strange. The power levels are much lower than what you'd expect." "From ships that size, how much lower?" Jake asked. "Well, sir, their main weapons appear to be simple plasma cannons, the kind we used about 50 years ago, and their shielding technology looks like it's about 20 years behind ours." Jake frowned. "That doesn't make sense." If they're from another galaxy, their technology should be either far behind ours or far ahead, not slightly behind. Dr. Park looked up from his console. Captain, I've been analyzing their language patterns and cultural references. Some of their phrases seem to be taken directly from old Earth science fiction movies. Specifically, B-movies from the 1950s. What do you mean? Well, phrases like pathetic earthlings and planet-crushing weapons are classic lines from those old films. It's almost like they learned how to be threatening from watching our movies. Jake sat back in his chair, processing this information. So, we have aliens from another galaxy who talk like 1950s movie villains and have technology that's slightly behind ours. This is getting stranger by the minute. Captain, Lisa called out, I'm receiving another transmission. It's from Earth Command. Put it through. Admiral Claire Rodriguez appeared on the secondary screen, looking serious but not particularly worried. Captain Morrison, we've reviewed your transmission. The Joint Chiefs are taking this seriously, but we're not panicking. We're sending a diplomatic team to handle first contact protocols. What about their threats, Admiral? We're preparing defensive measures, but frankly, their technology doesn't seem particularly advanced. We're more curious than concerned at this point. After the call ended, Jake called his senior staff together in the briefing room. The mood was tense but not fearful. Everyone had seen the transmission, and everyone was thinking the same thing. All right, let's talk about what we all observed, Jake began. Dr. Park, your analysis? The language patterns are definitely influenced by Earth media. Their costume design looks like something from a community theater production. And their ship design, from what we can see, appears to be more focused on looking impressive than being functional. Engineering assessment? Jake asked, but Danny Walsh shook his head. Their technology is real, but it's not advanced. The weapons they're showing off are actually less powerful than what we have. Their ships look big, but they're not particularly well built. So what are we dealing with here? Jake asked. Lisa Carter spoke up. Captain, I hate to say this, but they remind me of kids playing dress-up. Everything about them seems designed to look scary rather than actually be scary. But they're from another galaxy? Dr. Park pointed out. How did they get here if their technology is so basic? Maybe they're not from another galaxy, Jake said slowly. Maybe they're from somewhere closer and just want us to think they're from far away. The briefing continued for another hour, with each piece of evidence making the aliens seem less threatening and more puzzling. By the end, the crew had more questions than answers. As they prepared to wait for the diplomatic team to arrive, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something completely unprecedented. Not a powerful alien empire, but something else entirely. Something that would challenge everything they thought they knew about first contact with alien civilizations. The next 24 hours were going to be very interesting indeed. 3 days later, the Zephyrian War Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system. Admiral Claire Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the battleship New Horizons, watching the incoming fleet through the main view screen. She had expected to see massive warships bristling with weapons. Instead, she found herself staring at what looked like a collection of metal boxes with engines attached. Commander Phillips, give me a full tactical assessment, she ordered. Commander Steve Phillips ran his hands over the sensor controls, his expression growing more confused by the second. Admiral, I'm reading 12 vessels total. They're calling them dreadnoughts, but the largest one is only about the size of our destroyer-class ships. And their weapons? That's the strange part, ma'am. They appeared to be equipped with basic plasma cannons. The kind we stopped using 15 years ago because they were too slow and inefficient. Admiral Rodriguez frowned. Show me their flagship. The view screen zoomed in on the laid vessel. It was painted bright gold and covered in what appeared to be decorative spikes. Along its hull, someone had painted the words Deathbringer Supreme in large red letters. The ship was flying several colorful flags and banners that fluttered in the artificial atmosphere surrounding it. Are those Christmas lights? Asked Lieutenant Amy Jackson, the communications officer. Steve looked at his readings again. Yes, ma'am, they appear to be running some kind of decorative lighting system along the hull. It's drawing about as much power as their main weapons. Admiral Rodriguez had commanded fleets for over 20 years. She had faced down enemy warships, space pirates, and hostile alien drones. But she had never encountered anything quite like this. Open a channel to their flagship. The screen flickered, and Supreme War Marshal Crexton the Terrible appeared. He was an imposing figure, standing nearly 8 feet tall with bright blue skin and 4 arms. He wore what appeared to be a crown made of shiny metal with plastic jewels glued all over it. His cape was even more elaborate than Ambassador Vextar's, with golden trim and what looked like sequins. "Foolish humans," Crexton boomed, his voice echoing through some kind of amplification system. "You dare to challenge the might of the Zephyrian Empire? Our fleet will crush your pathetic vessels like insects beneath our boots." "I am Admiral Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force," Claire replied calmly. "We're here to discuss your terms." "Terms?" Crexton laughed, a sound like thunder rolling through a metal pipe. "There are no terms, only surrender or destruction. Behold, the power of our planet-killer weapon." The screen showed what appeared to be a large laser cannon being wheeled into position on the flagship's deck. It was bright purple and covered in blinking lights. A crew of aliens in matching purple uniforms began charging the weapon, complete with dramatic gestures and shouting. "Prepare to witness the annihilation of your moon," Crexton declared. The weapon fired, sending a bright purple beam toward Earth's moon. Admiral Rodriguez and her crew watched in fascination as the beam struck the lunar surface and created a small crater about the size of a football field. "That's it?" Commander Phillips asked quietly. "Admiral," called out Chief Engineer Maria Santos from her station, "I've analyzed their weapon discharge. At that rate of fire, it would take them approximately 3 years to drill through to the moon's core." Admiral Rodriguez had to work hard to keep her expression neutral. "Very impressive, Marshal Crexton. However, I think there may be some misunderstanding about our capabilities." "Misunderstanding?" Crexton roared. "You dare to question the might of our armada? We have conquered 1,000 worlds across the galaxy. We are the terror of the cosmos." "I'm sure you are, Admiral Rodriguez," said diplomatically. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss this situation. I believe President Santos would like to speak with your Emperor." Crexton's expression changed slightly. "Your Supreme Overlord wishes to speak with our glorious Emperor? This is acceptable, but know this, human. Any treachery will result in the complete destruction of your species." After the transmission ended, Admiral Rodriguez called her senior staff to the briefing room. The mood was a mixture of confusion and barely contained amusement. "All right, people, let's figure out what we're dealing with," she began. "Commander Phillips, what's your tactical assessment?" "Admiral, their fleet poses virtually no threat to. You assess their weapons are outdated, their ships are poorly designed, and their tactics seem to be based on intimidation rather than actual combat effectiveness." "But they did destroy part of the moon," pointed out Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the fleet's science advisor. "Yes, but it took them 10 minutes to charge their weapon for one shot that did minimal damage. Our standard defensive systems could absorb that kind of attack indefinitely." Admiral Rodriguez nodded. "What about their ship design? Are they hiding more advanced technology?" Chief Engineer Santos shook her head. "I've run every scan we have. Their ships appear to be exactly what they look like. Basic metal construction with simple engines and weapons. They're not hiding anything." "So why do they think they're so threatening?" asked Commander Phillips. "Maybe they've never encountered real military technology before," suggested Dr. Walsh. "If they've been conquering primitive worlds, they might think this level of technology is impressive." Lieutenant Jackson looked up from her tablet. "Admiral, I've been reviewing their communication patterns. They keep using phrases like tremble. Before our might and pathetic inferior beings, it's like they're reading from a script." "What kind of script?" "The kind you'd find in a really bad science fiction movie. Everything they say sounds like dialogue from a B-movie villain." Admiral Rodriguez considered this. Dr. Walsh, is it possible they learned about warfare from our entertainment media? It's possible, but how would they have access to our movies? Radio transmissions travel through space, Commander Phillips pointed out. If they've been monitoring our broadcasts, they might have picked up television signals. So you're saying they learned how to be threatening from watching our movies? Admiral Rodriguez asked. It would explain a lot, Dr. Walsh said. Their costumes, their dialogue, their dramatic gestures, even their ship design looks like something from a 1950s space opera. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent call from Earth. President Maria Santos appeared on the main screen, looking tired but determined. Admiral Rodriguez, I've been briefed on the situation. How serious is this threat? Honestly, Madam President, they don't appear to be much of a threat at all. Their technology is primitive and their tactics are theatrical, but they claim to have conquered 1,000 worlds. Yes, ma'am, but we have no evidence of that, and based on what we've seen, it's hard to believe they could conquer anything more advanced than a medieval civilization. President Santos nodded slowly. I want to handle this diplomatically. Set up a meeting with their emperor. Maybe we can resolve this without any conflict. Yes, ma'am. They've agreed to a meeting, but they want it to be formal. They seem very concerned with ceremony and protocol. That's fine. I'll prepare a diplomatic team. In the meantime, keep monitoring their fleet. I want to know everything about these aliens before we sit down with them. As the meeting ended, Admiral Rodriguez looked out at the alien fleet through the view screen. The ships were still there, still flashing their decorative lights and flying their colorful banners. They looked less like a military force and more like a parade float convention. Commander Phillips, she said quietly, what do you think we're really dealing with here? Steve Phillips shook his head. I honestly don't know, Admiral, but I don't think they're what they claim to be. Admiral Rodriguez had the same feeling. Whatever these aliens were, they weren't the fearsome galactic conquerors they pretended to be. The question was, what were they really and what did they actually want? The meeting took place aboard Unity Station, a neutral diplomatic facility halfway between Earth and the alien fleet. Ambassador Susan Lee had been chosen to lead the human delegation. She had handled first contact situations before, but nothing quite like this. As she waited in the main conference room, Susan reviewed her notes one more time. The aliens had sent very specific requirements for the meeting. They wanted red carpets, golden chairs, and what they called proper tribute music during their entrance. The station crew had done their best to accommodate these requests, though nobody was quite sure what tribute music meant. Ambassador, called Lieutenant Danny Walsh from the security station, they're requesting permission to board. They're asking if we have a landing platform worthy of galactic royalty. Susan sighed. Tell them we have a standard docking bay that's been decorated according to their specifications. 20 minutes later, the Zephyrian delegation arrived. Supreme War Marshal Crexton, the Terrible, led the group, still wearing his elaborate crown and cape. Behind him came 6 other aliens, all dressed in colorful costumes with different themes. One wore what appeared to be a suit made entirely of shiny metal strips. Another had feathers attached to his arms and a beak-shaped helmet. Greetings, primitive beings, Crexton announced as he entered the conference room. We have come to accept your surrender and discuss the terms of your servitude. Dr. Paul Chen, the cultural anthropologist on the team, leaned over to Susan and whispered, They're walking in formation like they're in a parade. Susan stood up and smiled diplomatically. Welcome to Unity Station, Marshal Crexton. I am Ambassador Susan Lee, representing the United Earth Government. United Earth Government? Crexton looked confused. Where is your Supreme Overlord? We demand to speak with your Emperor. We don't have an Emperor, Susan explained. We have a democratically elected president. What, Ikely? Asked the alien with the metal suit. What strange word is this? It means the people choose their leaders, Dr. Chun explained. Everyone gets to vote. The aliens looked at each other with obvious confusion. The people choose? Crexton asked. But who tells them what to choose? Nobody. They decide for themselves based on what they think is best. This is madness, declared the alien with the feathered costume. How can a civilization function without a supreme ruler to make all decisions? Susan was beginning to understand that this was going to be a very unusual diplomatic meeting. Perhaps you could tell us about your government system? Crexton straightened his cape and struck a dramatic pose. Our glorious emperor rules with absolute power over our vast empire. His word is law across 1,000 conquered worlds. That's very impressive, Susan said. Could you tell us more about these conquered worlds? Of course, Crexton replied proudly. He gestured to one of his companions, who produced what appeared to be a large book made of construction paper. The cover was decorated with crayon drawings of spaceships and planets. Behold, the Sacred Chronicle of Conquest, Crexton announced. He opened the book to reveal pages covered in childlike drawings and handwritten text in bright-colored markers. Dr. Chun tried to keep his expression neutral as Crexton began reading. First, we conquered the peaceful world of Fluffington Prime. The inhabitants, known as the Bunny People, surrendered after we demonstrated our mighty war dance. War dance? Susan asked. Yes, observe our traditional victory celebration, Crexton said. He and his companions began performing what appeared to be a cross between a conga line and a chicken dance. They hopped around the room, flapping their arms and making loud, whooping sounds. Lieutenant Walsh had to excuse himself from the room. Through the security monitors, Susan could see him in the hallway, laughing so hard he was holding his sides. Very intimidating, Susan managed to say when the dance was finished. Indeed, Crexton said proudly. Next, we conquered the crystal caves of Sparkleton. The gem miners there were so impressed by our shiny armor that they immediately agreed to pay tribute. Dr. Chun looked at the book over Crexton's shoulder. The drawing showed stick figures giving what appeared to be bags of glitter to aliens in foil costumes. And what kind of tribute do you usually require? Susan asked. The finest treasures, of course, replied the feathered alien. Shiny rocks, colorful metals, and the most prized possession of all, which is? Cake, said Crexton. Seriously. All conquered worlds must provide cake for our victory celebrations. Susan blinked. Cake? Yes, the sweet bread of triumph. It is tradition. After every conquest we have a great feast with cake and dancing. Dr. Chun was frantically taking notes. What happens to the people on the worlds you conquer? They become part of our glorious empire, Crexton explained. They get to wear special costumes and participate in our celebrations. Everyone gets a title and a colorful badge. So you don't enslave them or force them to work? Enslave? Crexton looked horrified. That would be mean. We invite them to join our empire. If they don't want to, they can say no. And if they say no, then we move on to the next world and try again, said the metal-suited alien. There are many worlds in the galaxy. Some want to join, some don't. It's okay. Susan was beginning to realize that this wasn't a military conquest at all. Marshal Crexton, when you say you conquered these worlds, do you mean you asked them to join your empire, and they agreed? Of course, what else would conquest mean? Dr. Chun looked up from his notes. On your world, what does the word conquest mean? It means to invite someone to be your friend and have them say yes, Crexton explained. Is there another meaning? Susan and Dr. Chun exchanged glances. On Earth, conquest usually means to take over by force. By force? The aliens looked shocked. That sounds terrible. Why would anyone want to do that? Well, to gain power or resources, Susan said. But if you force people to give you things, they won't be happy, said the feathered alien. And if, they're not happy, they won't want to celebrate with you. And what's the point of having an empire if you can't have parties? As KREX single quotes ton. Dr. Chun was scribbling notes furiously. So your entire empire is voluntary? Of course. We travel to different worlds and ask if they want to join our empire. If they say yes, we give them costumes and teach them our victory dances. If they say no, we thank them for their time and move on. But what about your threats to destroy Earth? Susan asked. Crexton looked confused. Threats? We never threatened anyone. You said you would crack our planet like an egg. Oh, that, Crexton laughed. That's just the traditional greeting. It's supposed to sound impressive. We learned it from your television shows, our television shows? Yes, we've been watching your broadcasts for many years. We learned that when meeting new civilizations, you're supposed to sound powerful and mysterious. All the best alien leaders in your movies talk like that. Susan put her head in her hands. So you've been acting like movie villains because you thought that's how aliens are supposed to behave? Exactly. We wanted to make a good first impression. The meeting continued for another hour, with each revelation making the situation more absurd. The Zephyrians weren't conquerors at all. They were essentially a group of friends who traveled around the galaxy looking for other civilizations to befriend. They had learned about proper alien behavior from intercepted Earth television broadcasts and had been doing their best to act the part. By the end of the meeting, Susan wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization had turned into the galaxy's most elaborate case of mistaken identity. The next morning, Intelligence Officer Rachel Davis sat in her office aboard Unity Station, staring at the most unusual report she had ever written. After 12 hours of analyzing intercepted Zephyrian communications, she had uncovered the truth about the so-called Galactic Empire. The reality was far stranger than anyone had imagined. Ambassador Lee, she called over the intercom, you need to see this immediately. 10 minutes later, Susan Lee and Dr. Paul Chun were sitting in Rachel's office, reading through pages of translated alien communications. The more they read, the more confused they became. Are you sure about this? Susan asked. Completely sure, Rachel replied. I've run these translations through every verification system we have. The Zephyrian Empire isn't an empire at all. It's basically a social club. Dr. Chun looked up from the documents. A social club? Yes, according to their internal messages, the whole empire concept started about 50 years ago when they got bored with their peaceful lives. They live in a post-scarcity society where nobody has to work and everyone has everything they need, so they invented the empire for entertainment? Susan asked. Exactly. They were watching old Earth science fiction movies and thought it looked fun to pretend to be galactic conquerors. So they started dressing up in costumes and visiting other worlds to play act being an empire. Rachel pulled up a holographic display showing a star map. Look at this. Every world they claim to have conquered is actually a willing participant in their game. They take turns being the victims. What do you mean? Dr. Chun asked. Each planet gets to be conquered for a few months. They put on a show of being defeated, then they get to join the empire and help conquer the next world. It's like a galaxy-wide game of make-believe. Susan stared at the map. You're telling me that their entire civilization is built around playing pretend? Not their entire civilization, just this group? There are millions of Zephyrians who live. Normal lives on their home worlds. But several thousand of them decided to form this traveling theater group and tour the galaxy. Dr. Chen was taking notes frantically. What about their technology, their weapons? That's the best part, Rachel said with a grin. They deliberately made their weapons weak and their ships look crude because they didn't want to actually hurt anyone. Everything is designed to look scary without being dangerous. But what about their leader? This Supreme Emperor they keep talking about? Rachel pulled up another document. His real name is Bobrick the Somewhat Adequate. He's a democratically elected leader who was chosen because he had the best costume. He gets re-elected every 2 years and his main job is to plan the next conquest tour. Susan put her head in her hands. This is insane. We've been preparing for war with a bunch of cosmic theater enthusiasts. It gets better, Rachel continued. According to their communications, they've been trying to contact Earth for years because they want to invite us to join their game. They think we'd be perfect participants because we invented all the movies that inspired them. So when they demanded tribute and threatened to destroy us, they were trying to sound like the aliens in our movies. They thought that's how we expected aliens to behave. Dr. Chin shook his head. But why didn't they just explain this from the beginning? Because they thought it would ruin the game. They wanted to give us the full experience of being contacted by a galactic empire. They were planning to reveal the truth after we joined. But they didn't expect us to take it so seriously. Susan stood up and walked to the window overlooking the docking bay. She could see the Zephyrian ships parked there, still decorated with their colorful lights and banners. So what happens now? Do we tell them we know the truth? I think we should, Rachel said. They're actually worried that they might have scared us too much. Their latest messages show they're concerned about our reaction. What do you mean? They expected us to be excited about joining their empire. Instead, we've been treating them like a military threat. They're starting to think they did something wrong. Dr. Chun looked at his notes. This explains so much about their behavior. The dramatic speeches, the elaborate costumes, the childlike drawings in their conquest book. They're not trying to deceive us, Susan realized. They're trying to entertain us. Rachel nodded. Exactly. From their perspective, they're giving us the gift of adventure and fun. They can't understand why we seem so worried about it. We need to call President Santos, Susan said. She needs to know about this before the next meeting. An hour later, President Maria Santos appeared on the main screen in the conference room. She listened to the briefing with growing amazement. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said finally. The alien empire that's been threatening us is actually a group of friends who want to play games with us? That's correct, Madam President, Susan replied. They've been doing this for decades with other civilizations. It's a form of interactive entertainment, and the other civilizations enjoy this? According to our intelligence, yes. Many of them look forward to their turn to be conquered. It's become a popular form of galactic tourism. President Santos was quiet for a long moment. This is certainly not what I expected when I took office. How do we handle this? I recommend we tell them the truth, Susan said. Let them know we understand their game and see if we can work out a better way to participate. What about our military response? We have 3 fleets on high alert. We can stand them down, Admiral Rodriguez said from her position off-camera. These aliens pose no threat to anyone. If anything, they're probably the most peaceful civilization we've ever encountered. All right, President Santos decided. Ambassador Lee, I want you to arrange another meeting with their leadership. Be honest with them about our confusion and see if we can find a way to make this work for everyone. The second meeting took place that afternoon. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of the formal conference room, they met in one of the station's recreational areas. With comfortable chairs and refreshments, Marshal Crexton arrived without his elaborate costume, wearing simple clothes that looked much more practical. He seemed nervous and uncertain. Ambassador Lee, he said as soon as he sat down, we are concerned that we may have caused offense. Our intelligence officer Bobrick has been monitoring your communications, and it appears you are not enjoying our conquest game, Susan smiled. Marshal Crexton, we need to be honest with each other. We know the truth about your empire, Crexton's expression fell. You know, we know that you're not actually conquerors. We know that your empire is a form of entertainment, and we know that you've been trying to give us what you thought was a fun experience. Are you angry with us? Crexton asked quietly. No, we're not angry. We're actually quite impressed. You've created something unique and wonderful. We just misunderstood what you were trying to do. Crexton brightened considerably. So you understand that we never meant to frighten you? We understand completely. And we're interested in learning more about your game. We think there might be ways for humans to participate that would be fun for everyone. Really? Crexton's excitement was obvious. We have been hoping to include Earth in our empire for many years. Your movies gave us so many good ideas for conquest scenarios. Dr. Chun leaned forward. We'd like to propose something. Instead of conquest, what if we started with cultural exchange? We could learn about your games and entertainment, and we could share some of our own. That sounds wonderful, Crexton said. We have so many questions about your civilization, and we would love to show you some of our other games. Other games? Oh yes, Conquest is just one of many activities we enjoy. We also have space racing, poetry competitions, and something we call the Great Cake Baking Contest. Susan laughed. That sounds like something we'd definitely be interested in. For the first time since the aliens had arrived, everyone in the room was smiling. What had started as a potential interstellar war was turning into the beginning of a beautiful friendship. 6 months later, Unity Station had been transformed into something nobody could have imagined. What was once a simple diplomatic facility had become the headquarters for the most unusual partnership in galactic history. Director Chris Martin, from NASA, stood on the observation deck, watching as human and Zephyrian crews worked together to prepare for the biggest event of the year. Commander Walsh, how are the preparations coming along? Chris asked into his communicator. Everything's on schedule, Director, came the reply from Danny Walsh, who was now the station's event coordinator. The Zephyrians have outdone themselves. This time, you should see what they've built in Cargo Bay 7. Chris made his way through the station's corridors, passing groups of humans and aliens working side by side. The Zephyrians had quickly become everyone's favorite guests. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and their creativity was boundless. In Cargo Bay 7, Chris found a sight that made him stop and stare. The entire space had been converted into what appeared to be a medieval castle, complete with towers, banners, and a working drawbridge. Zephyrian engineers were putting the finishing touches on a dragon that breathed harmless colored smoke. Impressive, isn't it? Said a familiar voice behind him. Chris turned to see Bobrick, the somewhat adequate, who had become the unofficial ambassador between the two species. The alien leader was wearing a simple jumpsuit instead of his elaborate emperor costume, though. He still wore a small crown that he claimed helped him think better. Bobrick, this is amazing. How did you build all this so quickly? When you love what you do, work becomes play, Bobrick replied with a smile. Besides, we've had lots of practice. We've been building temporary worlds for our games for decades. And this is for the cultural exchange program? Yes, we call it the Great Adventure Experience. Humans get to play the role of brave knights rescuing a princess from our dragon. Then we all have a feast and celebrate together. Chris shook his head in wonder. I still can't believe how this all started. 6 months ago, we thought you were going to invade us, and we thought you wanted us to invade you, Bobrick laughed. It's funny how misunderstandings can work out so well. The cultural exchange program had been President Santos's idea. Instead of joining the Zephyrian conquest game, Earth had proposed something different. Humans and Zephyrians would work together to create new forms of entertainment that both species could enjoy. The results had exceeded everyone's expectations. The Zephyrians' technology for creating realistic environments had revolutionized human entertainment. Meanwhile, human creativity and storytelling had given the aliens hundreds of new game ideas. Director Martin, called Captain Jake Morrison as he approached. Jake had been promoted to station commander after his successful handling of the first contact situation. We just received word from Earth. The first group of tourists from Zephyria Prime will arrive next week. How many? About 500? They're all excited to visit the planet that created their favorite movies. Bobrick clapped his hands together. Oh, they will love Earth. We've been planning this trip for months. They want to see Hollywood visit a theme park and attend something called a comic convention. Comic-Con should be interesting, Chris said. I think they'll fit right in. The partnership had benefits that nobody had anticipated. Earth's entertainment industry had embraced the Zephyrians with open arms. Movie studios were lining up to work with aliens who could create any environment imaginable using their holographic technology. Meanwhile, the Zephyrians had found a new audience for their elaborate games. Humans loved the interactive experiences they created, and Earth was rapidly becoming the most popular tourist destination in their empire. Chris, called Dr. Helen Rodriguez as she joined the group. Helen had become the lead scientist on the Human Zephyrian Technology Exchange Program. You need to see what we've accomplished in Lab 3. They made their way to the research section of the station. Lab 3 had been converted into a workshop where human and Zephyrian engineers worked together on new projects. Show him the education system, Helen said to a young Zephyrian engineer named Ziploc the Creative. Ziploc activated a holographic display that filled the room with what appeared to be ancient Rome. Citizens in togas walked through the streets while vendors sold goods in the marketplace. "This is our new history education program," Ziploc explained excitedly. "Students can walk through any historical period and experience it firsthand. They can talk to the people, explore the buildings, and see how people lived. It's completely interactive," Helen added. "Students learning about the American Revolution can attend the signing of the Declaration of Independence. They can walk through ancient Egypt and help build the pyramids." Chris watched as a group of human students appeared in the simulation, dressed in Roman clothing and speaking with the historical figures. "This will change education forever. We're also working on language learning programs," said another Zephyrian engineer. "Students can visit any planet in our empire and practice speaking with native populations. And the best part," Bobrick said proudly, "is that it's all completely safe. No matter what historical period or alien world they visit, students can't be hurt. It's all simulation, but it feels completely real." The group moved on to see other projects. In one lab, Zephyrian artists were working with human musicians to create new forms of music that combine sound with visual effects. In another, human chefs were learning to prepare Zephyrian delicacies while alien cooks mastered human recipes. "Bobrick," Chris said as they walked, "I have to ask, are you happy with how this turned out? You gave up your conquest game to work with us." "Gave up?" Bobrick looked surprised. "We didn't give up anything. We gained something much better." "What do you mean?" "Before we met humans, our games were fun but limited. We could only play with civilizations that understood our rules. But humans brought something new. You brought imagination." "Imagination?" "Yes, humans think of possibilities we never considered. Your stories, your movies, your dreams of adventure. They've given us 1,000 new games to play. And the other members of your empire, are they happy about the change?" "They love it. Every world in our empire wants to visit Earth now, and they all want to try the new games we're creating together." They arrived at the main conference room, where preparations were underway for the evening celebration. Tonight marked the 6-month anniversary of First Contact, and beings from across the galaxy had come to celebrate. Admiral Rodriguez was already there, talking with Marshal Crexton about plans for a joint military exercise. Not a real battle, of course, but a spectacular show that would demonstrate both human and Zephyrian technologies. "It's going to be amazing," Crexton was saying. "We'll stage a mock space battle with fireworks and holographic effects. Then we'll all land and have a victory party together." "And the winner?" Admiral Rodriguez asked. "Everyone wins. That's the best kind of battle." President Santos appeared on the main screen for the evening's opening ceremony. Behind her, Chris could see the lights of Washington, D.C., where a Zephyrian Cultural Center had been built on the National Mall. 6 months ago, the president began, we prepared for humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. We expected conflict, negotiation, or perhaps trade agreements. What we found instead was friendship. The crowd in the conference room applauded. Humans and Zephyrians stood side by side, many wearing mixed costumes that combined elements from both cultures. Today, we're not just allies or trading partners. We're friends, collaborators, and fellow dreamers. Together, we're building something that neither of our species could have created alone. Bobrick stepped forward to address the crowd. When we first came to your solar system, we thought we were bringing you a gift. We thought we were offering you adventure and excitement. What we discovered is that the greatest adventures happen when friends work together. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. There was food from dozens of worlds, music that blended human and alien styles, and games that challenged the imagination. As Chris watched the festivities, he reflected on how much had changed. Humanity's first contact with aliens had turned into the galaxy's greatest friendship. And it had all started because a group of cosmic theater enthusiasts had decided to learn about drama from old Earth movies. Captain Morrison joined him at the observation window. Strange how things work out, isn't it? Strange and wonderful, Chris agreed. Who would have thought that the scariest thing about first contact would be trying not to laugh? Outside the station, human and Zephyrian ships flew in formation, their lights creating patterns against the stars. They were no longer the separate fleets of two different species. They were the ships of friends, explorers, and partners in the greatest adventure of all, the exploration of friendship across the galaxy. The story of the day humans met the Galactic Empire and burst into laughter had become the story of the day the galaxy learned that the best conquests are made with kindness, creativity, and a really good sense of humor.